Test canal français.
Je vous entends bien.
Merci d'être là. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue et on va passer.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. We're going to be talking about transport during this fourth EUSALP conference. We have some participants who are here with us today in person and others who are here on video. I would like to say hello to the welcoming authorities that are here with us today. Thank you so much. It is a real honor for me to be here today.
On n'a pas de son.
I'm afraid there is no audio feed. The interpreter cannot hear the speaker. I'm afraid there seems to be a slight technical issue with the sound. The interpreters are not receiving the feed.
On va régler ça progressivement.
Oui.
Le temps qu'on me fasse signe en régie, mais normalement tout devrait être opérationnel.
Okay, we are just fixing the technical issues with the sound. This is the Vice Mrs. Felipe, the Vice Governor and Councillor for Mobility in the Tyrol region, dear partners in the Alps and the Transalpine regions, it is a great pleasure for me to be here to welcome you here today in the name of the President of the region, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, Mr. Muselier, as well as the Deputy Mayor, Christian Estrosi, in this wonderful Centre Universitaire Méditerranéen in Nice. I would like to welcome very warmly everyone who is here with us here today in person, and the 6 countries and 45 regions of the Alpine region. We have already 45 people listening to us here today online. It would have been much better, obviously, for everyone to be here in person, but unfortunately, the context with COVID is making this impossible. We are a big, great family, the Alpine family. The French presidency and the 3 regions in the Alps, the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, the Bourgogne-Franche-Comté, and the Rhône-Alpes have come together to work and collaborate effectively since the beginning of the crisis in this double format, in person and video conference. So the end of the health crisis will enable us to come together for the next General Assembly on the 9th and 10th of December in 2021. And this conference is all about Alpine mobility. The European Council has proposed to make 2021 the European Year of Rail Transport to ensure that trains are a means of transport that are in line with climate issues. It is a real honor for me to be here to welcome and open this conference alongside my colleagues from the local authorities in the context of the 2020 Year of Rail Transport. This health crisis has really highlighted all of the issues to do with rail transport that will be able to contribute to the future strategies of the European region to enable intelligent and smart transport. It is very important for European rail policies because this is the first year of the implementation of the 4th rail package. This policy is aiming to create a European railway space that is much more efficient and will be able to overcome all of the barriers that are legal and technical in order to support economic growth. In the European Union, transport represents 25% of greenhouse gas emissions. Rail transport is the only means of transport that has been able to considerably reduce greenhouse gas emissions over the last 50 years. And it is a real alternative for traveling responsibly and efficiently. Rail transport is 0.4% of the greenhouse gas emissions at the moment. This means that rail is the most effective way of linking different regions and giving access to regions which are difficult to get to, especially within the context of cross-border commuting. Despite this, however, only 7% of commuters take trains. Thank you, dear Laurence, for bringing this to my attention this morning. And freight is also transported by rail. This has meant that we have been able to come up with some particularly fantastic perspectives that we have really put our heads together to come up with. Train transport is a real impact feature of resilience, and this will be able to bring to your attention and illustrate with some examples today during our presentations. Since October of last year, we have seen the valleys in Piemonte and Liguria, and we've been able to notice the real importance of an effective rail network between these regions in the Alps, Italian, French, and German as well, and to see to what extent that rail transport is really the means of transport of the future. Rail transport has been able to function despite the health crisis, and this has been really the only way to supply the inhabitants of the various valleys around the Alps. The example of the Cuneo region has been a perfect illustration of this as well, and has shown us at what point rail transport is the key factor of access for passengers and freight transport between the different Alpine valleys. The Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region is both an Alpine region and a Mediterranean region, and being able to link these two aspects has shown us how much we need to take into consideration the various different issues around the subject of rail transport. This is really our roadmap to head towards a dynamic, inclusive, respective European Union that takes into consideration the climate and the environment. These are major elements. I know that the work of the SUERA action group has been fighting to ensure that people are made aware of the different options in terms of alternative fuels as well in the Mediterranean and in the Alps. I am convinced that the governance, the macroeconomic governance is more and more relevant to ensure that local, regional, and national areas are put forward and highlighted both nationally and internationally. The Alpine region needs to be able to take into consideration the transformation of rail transport in the context of climate change, all the while preserving the quality of life in our Alpine regions. Finally, I will have the pleasure of putting forward a report on the macroeconomic changes in the Mediterranean, and more specifically for the coastal areas. I have been able to rely on the rich experience of the EUSALP program in order to help the policies within the EU context. Therefore, I hope you all continue to work efficiently together, and I hope you very much enjoy the conference that we are doing here today. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, Agnès Rompal. Thank you so much. We will continue with the speech from Mr. Christian Estrosi. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm first of all honored to be able to welcome you here today to this conference. I will continue on by introducing Christian Estrosi, who is a very important stakeholder in the Sud region. Since yesterday, I would like to say that I've taken on a lot more hope and color thanks to the improving situation in the health crisis that we are all going through at the moment. I would like to thank very much everyone who is working here at this university, those who have put together this conference today, and everyone who is here participating in the conference as well. In December 2021, I very much hope to see everyone at the next EUSALP conference as well, if the health context will allow it. And of course, there will be certain ministers who are also here with us today. We have Chantal Emeoud, who have been working with very closely over the past months and years. We also have Agnès de Rompal, who is a fantastic regional councillor in the Euro-Mediterranean Commission. Our regional councillor, Mr. Laurence Bautier, who is very involved in all of the work that we have been doing as well. Unfortunately, we are a victim of the storm that has been raging over the past few months. I would also like to thank the Vice Governor of the Tyrol region, Mrs. Felipe. I would like to as well thank all of the partners, all of the dear partners that have been here with us today and who work in the Alpine regions. We are more and more convinced that the EU is the key part of taking into consideration the different issues in the Alpine region, and that the area between the mountain and the seas has many different issues, environmental issues, territorial cohesion issues, economic development, transport, mobility. Mobility, and we are very much aware of this, is a key issue in our metropolis and in our region. First of all, because there are problems with urban congestion in every metropolis, and also because we need to link different areas of the regions sustainably and with innovation. This is why we have been working on mobility for different stakeholders since 2008, alongside the mayor of Nice and the president of the metropolis. In 2020, we have been coming up with a new transport scheme over the last 12 years that we have finally been able to implement. And we hope to continue this up until 2040, so that we will be able to share with the 49 different mayors of this metropolis. We hope to be able to work closely with the coastal areas as well as the mountain regions in order to build a roadmap for the next 20 years. Over this time, we have seen that relevant constructions have been able to improve the system for both road and rail transport. We have been cooperating with the region, and this is very important as well because we need to count on the region that supports us within the context of territorial sustainability and territorial cohesion. We have been implementing various different projects as well about public transport. We have been able to put into action alternatives to road transport. We are here today in Nice so that we will be able to take the train this afternoon for 26 minutes between Nice and another place. This will show us as a perfect example of the innovation that we have been implementing, as well as the culmination of all of the projects that we have been working on, as well as the studies that we have led, which have been able to help us get over certain issues. I think it would be I would like to underline that Louis Negre, who is the delegate president of the Nice metropolis, plays a fundamental role in all of the rail transport issues and with whom we have been working very closely. I would also like to mention the AG5 project, that has been working on different areas of the projects as well. And they've been doing fantastic work on intercommunal transport and access. When talking about rail transport, Of course, I would like to talk about the new development of the line between Marseille and Ventimiglia. We have 40,000 workers who take this train or take this train line every day. This is the equivalent of the RER local regional train in Paris B. So it's one of the busiest train lines in the whole of France. With Christian Estrosi, we have been putting together a project to improve access to the train line from the airport for trams, buses, and other means of transport in order to improve the situation for our metropolis. We want to be able to give people access to this region who don't just live in the local area. We want to give access to people who live in other regions. And we think that the development of this line will enable cross-border access much more easily. This will help social aspects, cultural aspects, economic aspects, and improve the entire situation to do with mobility. I would also like to say that within this scheme, we have innovative projects, which is a cable car between Nice and a place in the mountains that will show us how adapted cable cars are for interregional access as well. And the studies that we have undertaken have shown this as well. I would also mention, when talking about ecology and city development, there are alternatives, of course, to rail transport. I was thinking also about bicycles. For the last 12 years, we have many different people who are very much involved in improving the access that bicycles have within cities. We have built over 60 kilometers of cycle lanes that enable cyclists to get between Nice and Monaco. So this is a very important alternative in terms of transport between these two cities. Agnes Rompal mentioned something that I would like to come back to, of course, the health crisis at the moment. I would also like to mention two other crises that have affected international transport over the past 12 years. I'm talking, of course, about the collapse of the bridge in Genova in 2018. This is a tragedy, both for the locals as well as for the freight transport possibilities. And we very much, we feel sorry and we send out our heartfelt condolences to those who were affected by the collapse of this bridge. However, we see this as a new we see this within the context of new challenges. We need to take into consideration terrorism as well. And there is also the other issues such as, well, the death of our co-citizens. And we have been able to support many of them. I would like to thank them so much, everyone who was affected by these tragedies. Fortunately, we have been able to rebuild these roads as well. This is something that we've been working on with Christian Muselier. We have been very lucky to have such good partners who help us implement these projects, and I would like to thank them very much, as well as the 2020 of European rail transport. This is a fantastic initiative to come up with alternatives to rail transport that are much more efficient. Of course, ecological factors need to take into consideration investments as well. So our project in 2021, we have been able to discuss in Nice with European coordinators, as well as Mediterranean coordinators and other stakeholders who are involved in these projects. We've been able to discuss the issues of transport between Nice and Monaco In 2021, the line between Marseille and Ventimiglia will be supported by the EU Commission, and this is a great joy. It is fantastic for us to be able to say this morning. So we are going to see this morning the Alpine railroads that are both involved in tourism and patrimony and assets as well. I would like to mention that, of course, the storm Alex also showed us how essential transport links are within our basin. I would like to thank the government that have been so aware of all of the arguments that we have been communicating to them. So thank you so much for the Valley of the Roya, both for this valley and for the transport between the Alps and the Mediterranean. I'm so grateful to have people like Christian Estrosi, who has continued to make sure that these transport links remain open and that people are still able to use them and get to work. The French Prime Minister will come and inaugurate this, and this is a great source of pride for us. Continuing the functioning of these transport links is essential for so many people, and so many people are aware of this. And of course, this level of infrastructure needs to remain functional, both for economic and ecological aspects. We're so grateful to have the level of investment that we have been using in order to maintain these infrastructures and make sure that they remain fully operational. Thank you so much as well for the sustainable alternative transport in the mountains. We know that the economic activity is more difficult to maintain, and I would like to thank everyone who has been working so hard to continue that. Something else I would like to mention this morning is that I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk about it during this conference. I very much hope that everyone enjoys the conference today. It will be full of great content. It will be also the fantastic opportunity to discover the possibilities of rail transport in this region and in this department. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you very much, Anthony Bourret. We shall continue on this morning with a representative from the state. I'm of course talking about Jean-Baptiste Djebari, who is the French Transport Minister. He should be here with us on video.
Je suis extrêmement heureux d'introduire votre conférence et très honoré de présenter le ministre délégué en charge des Transports, Jean-Baptiste Djebari. L'organisation d'une conférence sur le ferroviaire à Nice ce jour est particulièrement à propos, ainsi que l'a dit l'intervenant précédent, puisque le train de nuit est la toute première ligne à être relancée dans le cadre du renouveau des trains de nuit et sera effectivement inaugurée dès demain par le Premier ministre. En cette année européenne du rail, je me félicite aussi que les réflexions de la SUERA portent sur les enjeux du ferroviaire dans le massif alpin. C'est évidemment très important pour le ministère que je représente, dans le cadre spécifique de la présidence française de la SUERA et en préparation de notre présidence à venir du Conseil de l'Union européenne en 2022. La participation active des régions alpines à cette initiative est cruciale pour porter au niveau européen des dynamiques de mobilité efficientes, respectueuses de l'environnement et au service des usagers, en complémentarité, vous l'avez dit, des autres initiatives alpines que sont la Convention alpine, le processus de Zurich, auquel le ministère est extrêmement attaché aussi. Bon, nous le savons tous, le secteur des transports, c'est le premier émetteur de gaz à effet de serre, responsable de 30% des émissions françaises. Le ministère de la Transition écologique est évidemment déterminé à faire bouger ces lignes durablement pour verdir le transport de passagers et de marchandises. L'ensemble des politiques conduites par le ministère chargé des Transports s'inscrit évidemment dans cette stratégie, puisque nos objectifs sont de décarboner au maximum les transports et les rendre plus connectés, tant sur le plan numérique que sur les offres de services concrets. Il y a le nouveau pacte ferroviaire en 2018, la loi d'orientation des mobilités dite LOM en 2019 et aujourd'hui la loi climat et résilience porte de nombreuses dispositions en ce sens. Et je voulais donc insister que la France n'a pas attendu la publication de la stratégie européenne comme beaucoup pour s'engager résolument en faveur du report modal. Nous faisons des efforts considérables pour cette transition écologique du transport de marchandises, notamment avec le ferroviaire, principalement, mais aussi le fluvial, qui permet d'accéder évidemment au cœur des villes avec du transport massifié. La stratégie portuaire nationale, déjà publiée, la stratégie nationale de fret que nous finalisons en ce moment, porte l'ambition du gouvernement. Nous allons porter en 2050 de 60 à 80% la part du fret containerisé manutentionné dans les ports français à destination et en provenance de la France. Pour le ferroviaire, l'État a choisi de reprendre à son compte l'ambition portée par les acteurs d'un doublement sur la décennie de la part modale du fret ferroviaire, passant ainsi de 9% en 2019 à 18% en 2030. À cet effet, dès l'année, 250 millions d'euros de crédits sont mobilisés dans le cadre du plan de relance, ainsi qu'une enveloppe supplémentaire de 170 millions d'euros d'aide pour l'exploitation des services de fret ferroviaire actés en loi de finances pour 2021. Évidemment, cet effort en faveur du report modal passe par la réalisation de certaines infrastructures emblématiques, au premier rang duquel, évidemment, le Lyon-Turin. L'État y est particulièrement engagé en faveur de ce projet, notamment pour permettre le cofinancement de l'Union européenne. C'est déjà dans le cadre du règlement actuel d'IMIE1, 814 millions d'euros de financement européen pour la section transfrontalière et 2 millions pour les études sur l'accès. Nous nous réjouissons évidemment des perspectives offertes par le projet européen du IMIE2, sur la période 2021-2027, pour laquelle nous chercherons avec nos amis italiens à continuer à trouver les cofinancements pour lesquels je suis certain que la Commission nous sera encore d'un grand soutien. Nous allons par ailleurs poursuivre le travail sur la programmation des accès pour lesquels la LOM a privilégié la modernisation de la ligne existante dans un premier temps et pour lesquels 700 millions d'euros ont été alloués à la FIT avant 2027 sont prévus. De manière générale, nous serons évidemment attentifs à ce que la révision du RTET, qui va être initiée à l'automne par la Commission et portée sous présidence française du Conseil, offre un cadre favorable à la réalisation des infrastructures clés du réseau ferroviaire européen, leur interopérabilité et la meilleure intégration des corridors de fret ferroviaire. Et je sais que vous êtes particulièrement sensibles dans ces régions à cette importance du fret ferroviaire. Au-delà de ces infrastructures européennes, ce sont les lignes de desserte du territoire qui revêtent une grande importance pour le report modal. Ça a été cité tout à l'heure largement. Après des décennies de sous-investissement sur ce réseau, le gouvernement a engagé avec les régions un vaste plan de remise à niveau de ces infrastructures et de remise à plat de leur gouvernance pour y pérenniser des services publics de transport qu'elles assurent, les régions notamment, y compris en zone rurale ou de montagne, et notamment dans les Alpes. Globalement, ce sera de l'ordre de 6,5 milliards d'euros qui seront investis à cette fin dans les 10 prochaines années. Ce plan se définit en protocoles d'accords régionaux. L'État et les régions ont d'ores et déjà signé plusieurs protocoles, notamment dans la région sud, Bourgogne-Franche-Comté, ici représenté, ainsi que les échanges se poursuivent et les échanges.
The exchanges will continue with other regions. The protocol has a distribution of the investments through the French railway network operator. And there will be a co-financing with the regions. In this recovery plan, 300 million euros will be invested through the French railway network in 2021 and 22. For now, we are lacking funding. There was a big lack of investment, and now we are getting back to it. There will be a better mobility of the freight services that had a lot of concurrence, a competition. And the minister, Mr. Giber, called other authorities to support, and several of them have answered positively, such as the southern region of France. We strongly think it is important also to count with European supports. The current situation and the current way the investments were made was limited to us, and we strongly think it needs to be rethinked. We know there will be a lot of innovation, and that is expected with the different material, renewal of material, hydrogen, alternative fuels, battery trains that will be circulating on non-electrical rail networks, as well as in the operation methods that will be used. Of course, the state is supporting regions in those. For example, last year, there was a new experimentation with hydrogen trains, and different funds were allocated to different regions with bimodal trains in Franche-Comté, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, etc. I hope those first experiences will help us improve the network, the train network. And I would like to thank you for inviting us. I wish you great success in your conference and a nice visit this afternoon that you will be visiting this train line of Bray. We know, and you know, that there has been this disaster last year that with emergency works in a very short term, and the line that could reopen was a great success for the local authorities and national authorities. So I would like to thank them for transporting people and goods. And the recovery has been rapid and spectacular. Thank you very much. Good conference. Thank you very much, Mark, Director of Infrastructures, and the C, representing Mr. Giber,
Thank you so much, Jean-Baptiste Giber, the Minister of Transport, for being here with us today and for your speech.
You know that.
I would like
With
to
other
therefore welcome Ingrid Felipe, who is the Vice Governor of the land
Tyrol.
of Tyrol.
She will also mention those subjects. Her region,
the region that she works
Tyrol
with is a co-pilot region in our
EUSALP.
project. She should be here with us today on Zoom.
Welcome, Ingrid Felipe.
Felipe, over to you. Ingrid should be connected. Ingrid, can you hear us?
She has an issue with her connection.
Ja, hallo, einen wunderschönen guten Morgen.
Bienvenue.
Sie hören mich?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Einen wunderschönen guten Morgen aus Innsbruck, aus Tirol. Darf ich Ihnen wünschen?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello from Innsbruck in Tyrol. Unfortunately, the sound issues we are currently having at the moment have made things difficult, but fortunately I am here and I hope that you can hear me. I represent the South Tyrol region.
In Südtirol, in Trentino,
for some time, we have been the presidency over this region for the action group that is involved in working on rail transport. I would like to remind you that transport and railroads play a very important part in freight and passenger transport. We have a lot of tourism in our valley and in our region. We have smaller problems compared to larger cities such as Nice, But despite our problems being smaller, does not mean that transport does not present major issues for us. So cooperation is even more important, especially with cross-border regions. We need to be looking for modifications in order to improve the railway system. This is an important factor. Very often in our area, we need to take restrictive measures in order to protect the health of our citizens, to protect infrastructure that needs to remain functional, and we are doing everything we can to ensure that there are sufficient discussions around these issues. People need to be made aware of them and we need to understand them properly. I would like to therefore thank you so much for improving the train and rail systems. We need railways in our area as an important alternative to road transport so that we can make sure to continue reducing carbon emissions. But not only this, we need to take into consideration noise pollution as well. There are sensitive factors to do with infrastructure in the Alps. And in South Tyrol, I would say that we are at a real crossroads. Our area is a cornerstone of Alpine transport, and we are fortunate enough to benefit from a very important level of support from the European Commission. We are looking to build a tunnel as well. This is a project that we are receiving support on from the EU. This will enable us to continue ensuring that the flow of tourists continues to come through our region. We need to ensure that we work together effectively, and as such, I'm very grateful that we are able to have such rich discussions in our action group. I have been able to meet some of the key stakeholders, but I hope that I will be able to meet other important ones in the near future. Obviously, I am not able to see the mayor, but hopefully I'll be able to meet him very soon. I therefore hope that everyone has a great day and benefits from the exchanges that we will be having during this conference. Thank you so much. Ingrid Felipe will be speaking later on during one of the debates about mobility and issues in Alpine transport. So the next speaker will be joining us by video as well. Hopefully there won't be any more video technical issues. I'm afraid that, of course, we are having more connection issues. Chantal Emeoud should be with us here shortly and be able to tell us her ideas about the relevant issues of rail transport. At the end of these opening speeches, there will be a short break before going on to the debates. We are just waiting for Chantal Emeoud to join us. She should be here with us by video. It appears that we are having some connection issues. I apologize for this. Perhaps we we'll be able to have Chantal join us later on. Hopefully we'll be able to sort out the connection issues as soon as possible. Okay, so I think that what we're going to be doing is to move on. We have many different speeches and debates, so we're going to actually move on to the second part of this morning. As I was saying, we're going to have Patrick Skoniewski, who is the co-leader of the GA4, the action that works in the Tyrol and South Tyrol region in Trentino. I very much hope that Patrick Skoniewski is here with us today and that he can hear us. Patrick, are you here? Patrick Skoniewski, who is, as I said, the co-leader of the GA4 and works in the Tyrol and South Tyrol Euro region. Hopefully he is listening and will be able to take the mic very shortly. We are having a few more technical issues. We'll be able to move on to our next speaker. If Olivier is here with us, Olivier Margu, then hopefully he will be able to take over from Skoniewski and will be able to tell us his ideas and his thoughts about Alpine rail transport. It appears that Olivier Margu is going to be joining us very shortly, we hope. We are just trying to fix the technical issues that we are experiencing at the moment. Olivier Margu, who is, as I mentioned before, the co-leader of the GA4 alongside Patrick Skoniewski. He works on different objectives to do with mobility and rail transport in the Alpine region. Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Olivier. It appears that he is here with us today. He's been able to help us get out of this tunnel, as we have been mentioning tunnels as well. A very relevant term. Thank you all. Thank you so much to the elected representatives who are here with us today. Thank you for the introduction. Of course, we work in the shadows, we work behind the scenes, and we all work in the mobility sector. Therefore, we are not necessarily always at the forefront of this kind of conference, but it is a great opportunity for us to put forward a certain number of technical issues that I would like to bring to everyone's attention. This, as everyone is aware, is a very important subject that we are all working on, and this will help us continue working on improving rail transport in the region. I will therefore hand over to Patrick Skoniewski when he is able to connect to the conversation, and he will present to us the work that the GA4 has been doing on rail transport in the Alpine region. 1 year is a very short space of time. To focus effectively on all of the major issues. The Région Sud, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur is of the action group and has been investing very much in mobility. It is a very relevant topic for climate change as well, something that we have been bringing to people's attention since 2016. The leadership of the action group with our Tyrolean colleagues has been a very important decision to gain access to higher levels of funding and financing. We have been cooperating not only with the local regions, but also with the states and with our colleagues from other regions, some of whom are present with us here today. Colleagues from Auvergne, from Franche-Comté, some who have been able to help us come up with priorities within the context of the French presidency and the manifesto, which is a framework document. This will be talked about very quickly and ties into the priorities Patrick will be able to talk to us about when he joins the conversation. The elected representatives before, but is the shift is very much an important factor and something that they care about greatly. We are supporting actively modal shift alongside our Tyrolean colleagues. This includes aspects such as sea transport, combined transport. However, these are very important issues and factors for freight transport as well as passenger transport. And our Tyrolean colleagues have been working very actively on this. The interoperability and intermodality solutions are a very important aspect as well for commercial and aspects, and trade is a culmination of all of the disparity between different projects and different actions that have been undertaken by different colleagues around different regions. So it's a collective effort and has been financed by the EU and followed very closely. This will be presented briefly later on during one of the debates. Another issue is access to isolated regions. This is a real issue for train and rail transport as well, of course, because it's very much an important factor for people in local and in isolated regions to be able to travel as well. Small train lines are sometimes not necessarily very much taken into consideration for these small populations, but just as important as the large ones for us. All of these lines, which are sometimes secondary lines, are co-financed by the EU. Today, we can see that they actually have a very crucial role to play because COVID has really brought this to the forefront to make sure the voices of these isolated habitations are heard. The fourth aspect is cable transport. This was mentioned earlier on. There are very interesting and innovative solutions that are being built at the moment. So the cable car, which is being built in order to access stations. This is what we call the valley lift as well. And as we've seen in other countries, this is an effective alternative for transport. Finally, the last consideration is developing alternative sources of fuel. In Provence-Alpes, working on this very closely in 2020, during which a study was undertaken by Alpine colleagues about carbon solutions by 2025, and this ties into the Green Pact 2020 agreement. We hope to have zero carbon emissions over the coming years, but this is of course a difficult objective to reach. This is an important aspect for us because we need to develop the supply of services, both for road and for train transport as well. And we need to use all of the options that are available to us in a coordinated way. And this was mentioned earlier on as well. Aspect for us to take into consideration on a day-to-day basis. European policymakers, we listen to them, we take into consideration what they say. Sometimes it's not always easy to implement their decisions though, but we need to make sure that we are listened to so that the users of the train systems take into consideration aspects such as alternative fuels. Even if someone who lives in an isolated valley, we hope that we want them to be able to access train transport just as much as anyone else. We want to make sure that they know that they are not forgotten. Just very quickly, I would like to mention the cooperation that hopefully Patrick will be able to tell us more about if he connects to the conversation. This is the most important aspect of any project, something that we really want to showcase today. Cooperation is vital. We are not able to achieve decarbonization objectives without working more closely together. Disparity is one of the main issues as well. We'll be talking about this during the conference. We'll be talking about hydrogen, advanced solutions for railways, infrastructures. We'll be talking about financement and investment as well for freight as well as passenger transport. However, these are not the sources of difficulty. The obligations that we have to cooperate better between regions and governments has been highlighted by the COVID crisis. We need to be all on the same page and working towards the same goals. Cooperation, therefore, is essential. Railways in the Alpine region are crucial, and we need to make sure that to work on them and take into consideration climate change. Not just in the Alpine region, though, but also in the Région Sud. We need to make sure that our efforts are underpinned. And as will be discussed during the rest of the conference, we have 5 levers for decarbonization and sustainable transport in the Alpine region. First of all, of course, is the supply, the modal shift that has been mentioned before, the ability and the volume of railway transport, that is very relevant, advanced technology, you have seen this yourselves, road transport as a factor of decarbonization, and of course, environmental issues. So these 5 levers are really the focus of decarbonization in France. And we also need to take into consideration the demand for transport in different areas. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you so much. Fortunately, we have been able to take Patrick Skoniecki. He has been able to connect with us today. He is joining us here from the South Tyrol region. He will be telling us about the work of the GA4. So over to you, Patrick.
Bonjour, j'espère que vous...
Our action mobility. I will show you with some slides a bit more in depth of what we have done so far, and it will also set up a bit the first roundtable discussions, hopefully. So if you could please show the PowerPoint presentation. Excellent. So once again, welcome from my side. So I'm part of the co-leader team of Action Group 4, representing the European region Tyrol, South Tyrol, Trentino. So I'm based in Innsbruck, and of course I deeply regret not being able to be present in Nice today, but hopefully we will make this trip happen soon. So just to show you a quick map for those who are not so familiar with the macro strategy for the Alpine region, we represent 80 million people in 7 countries and 48 regions. On the map, you see the blue perimeter. So we're not talking only about the real mountainous territory, but also the connection with the cities and economic centers and the plains that surround this green perimeter that you can see representing the Alpine Convention. And the idea really of this macro-regional strategy, is one of 4 strategies of the European Union, is to focus on one specific territory that shares similar challenges, and to, through cooperation in a multi-level governance approach, to find solutions to challenges. So if you go to the next slide, please. So it shows you the structure of Action Group 4, one of 9 action groups. Those 9 action groups aim to implement the action plan of the EUSALP. And Action Group 4 is co-led by the region and Provence at Côte d'Azur, who joined us in 2019, the co-lead. We have 6 national states and 16 regions represented in our group, as well as observers, advisory role from civil society and also economic stakeholders. It's really important that we involve the stakeholders on transport issues at multiple levels in order to really identify those common challenges and also solutions. And we also we built on a long history of cooperation in the Alpine. It was really a good basis when we started to work in 2016. We have the Alpine Convention, we have Argyle, we have the Monitoring Network. So there's a lot of knowledge that already exists, and we run in a macro-regional perspective. We meet 3 times a year, and then we have the annual mobility conference that we are holding in Nice. Next slide, please. So I will move directly to the right-hand side of this presentation. We are now in our 2nd mandate. We implemented a work plan for 3 years, and we identified 3 thematic areas. The first one is smart fleet logistics and combined transport to support a modal shift. Olivier already mentioned this topic briefly. We have a second priority on accessibility on local and regional transport links on the secondary network. So how do we connect those regions with the main transport corridors in Europe? This is the key question. And then the third one, focusing on smart and low carbon mobility and innovative transport solutions, which is also really important to also foster the modal shift in passenger transport especially. And we are really building on, we have produced already many results in our first years, and this is our basis for the second mandate. So just to give you some examples, we did an updated estimate of external cost factors in mountain regions, which is a really important element for transalpine freight transport. We had an overview of pricing components illustrating the competitiveness between road and rail freight transport, looking at road pricing elements on rail, looking at also track charges for rail, looking at energy costs in different countries of the Alpine region. We also had a study on container flows and management. So what is movement of containers areas across the how ports of the Adriatic connected to Northern Europe and so on. So this really helps us to now move a step ahead in the implementation of the action plan. So all the results are available on the website. You will see the link at the end of the presentation. We also have an interactive map, the so-called platform of knowledge, which really illustrates in a quite user-friendly way our results that we have produced so far. So please have a look at the website. Next slide, please. I will just briefly outline two concrete projects that we implemented in Action Group 4, and we will also talk about these later on in the first roundtable. So just to give you some idea, this is a project that we did together with Action Group 5, connectivity of EUSALP, and the main idea was to look at commuter flows. Traffic, which really is a big issue. The Alpine region has a lot of national borders, a lot of shared languages, a lot of differences in wages, so attracting a big labor market from across national borders. And we wanted to give ideas and solutions to make this commuter traffic more sustainable. So we did an analysis of cross-border flows. We identified hotspots of cross-border commuting. We have workshops, and we produced a toolbox, a concrete toolbox with solutions for the different stakeholders, for public authorities, but also for companies. So we gave an overview of best practices and cooperation models for company mobility management. And it's just a map that you will see here showing the different commuter flows from across the border to the different hotspots, so the labor markets in cross-border regions. So if you go to the next slide, please. Where you can see the policy recommendations that we produced from this project. I think what we really came up with, and this I think we have to really work on, and the macro region EUSALP provides for this, is that we work on cooperation with regions. So one big issue is the lack of data. So that was a main challenge in the first step of the project, to analyze and to find the data on cross-border commuting flows. Then to install an institutional political dialogue on cross-border commuting. We held local workshops also with local politicians, but we need to follow up on this, and we need to bring this topic on the agenda, because the vast majority, more than 90% of cross-border mobility flows is happening by car, often because the public transport systems are not well integrated in cross-border areas. So this really is a main issue, and that we have to improve, of course, the infrastructure, but we also have to improve the services of cross-border transport networks. We have to abolish negative regulatory frameworks. We also transport, but also share we will discuss on a bit more. The second project we'll discuss later that really before, where we identify to connect this is all from my side. Recently, the development of the three and mobility, and came up with in a first round where we received from our members. Support the projects, for example, by be at, of course, at EU level, but also level. Called extended for another week until the 4th of June. Sorry, the 4th of June. So we hope that we receive more interesting projects that then we can assess. And I think these projects not only illustrate the added value of our work and to really show the national dimension of transport and mobility, and they also really put our work into it's all from my side, and he wants to take the following discussions.
Continue with the topics. We will try start with. Can you hear us? Connected, we will be able to
Une table ronde consacrée
projects of the EUSALP. We'll hear different and then we will talk about the cross-border. Olivier talked about it. Project. Free Thank you. Talk about the different to improve specifically.
Talking from border rail connections. Next, please. Where did we start it of inter the next passenger services on the axis between Udine and Villach, so between Friuli-Venezia Giulia region and Land Carinthia, Austria, which started on June 2012, and since then, in cooperation with OBB and with the Ferrovia Udine Cividale, which is now Slovenia program. In that we make new rail passenger services. Experiences and taking into account that Slovenia in the northeast and exploited the fact that in 2004 there was from the Italian state, so regional and cross-border. And a limited number of cross-border cooperation with Giber and we started and we and the outcome of those meetings are the basis of in different routes connecting Austria and Vienna especially, via three alternative cross-border routes. The first route is crossing Slovenia too, so it's Trieste, what was a couple of years directly Vienna to Trieste. And the third one is represented by the connection between Trieste and Salzburg, of the present connection in between Salzburg and next one. Well, anyway, border connection is 8 kilometers in Slovenia and 24,000 put in place. And the first cross-border cross. The other options that I present the next one, please. And time of 7 hours, estimation. And the third option is the one which is connected via Udine. Next one, always passing through Villach. And this is going to be an extension of the running connection between Salzburg and Villach, and the total journey time estimated is 5 hours. Next slide, please. So as I said before, the first option is about to be launched. The reason why we this is the timetable you can find in the OBB website. There are several in Slovenia. Weeks and months. And for the third option, there is just a restriction, a constraint, which is related to the new service contract for Austria, which is coming into force in 2026. So this connection will be established from not before December. Presented are in a code each section. They are services covered by, according to regulation number 137/2007, and that is all.
Massimiliano Angelotti, alors j'ai le temps.
With a little time. And I am happy
Merci. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Chers amis partenaires de la SUERA.
Thank you very much, EUSALP partners. I am very enthusiastic to attend all those works. Issues that concern the Torino. I live actually in Vice.
Des habitants et des élus de ce territoire lourdement impactés.
disaster last year with a storm 7 months ago. This storm in white almost all from the tunnel in Sanghetto. We want to defend where it is part of my history, of the history of the place where I live, which is 3 regions. Monaco as well. The railway line people help to the villages which are accessible by road anymore. Recently, it's very important. It's an important place in the European Piedmont, Liguria, and Côte d'Azur. It is a door to the Alps and to the Mediterranean. It is a major issue. Also involved, and biodiversity we have to à Nice. With Genova and by the EUSALP into the UN 2023. To get that render the offers a great deal of possibilities, and we will European system for us to dismount teams of this last year. And I think all those years to maintain, to enhance, to support it at the European level, and who wish it to be integrated at the European level.
Laurence Bouetti, je vous en prie, retournez à votre avec un vrai intérêt pour une ligne comme celle-ci. Et connecter voilà, dans cette salle.
J'espère que vous m'entendez. Nous sommes loin de Bruxelles, mais proches
I can hear you, I hope that you can hear me. To bring solutions to the have presentation. I see it. About financing and what financing there works with that has been mobility been made by the certain railway. We have talked a lot about areas. As you can see, the fund, which is the largest in the European context, that is being validated at the moment, thanks to the projects that have been submitted to us. I have received 26 propositions so far, and we are still expecting certain ones that I should be receiving over the next weeks. This is going to help us look at what kind of funding will be allocated to different projects. This is also crisis. Manufacturing infrastructure as well. Specifically for repeating in US as well as I'm not going to talk about all the ones. Instead, I'm going to choose a couple of elements into during analysis. The European project. At the moment, we have more funding opportunities. First of which that I want to speak about the 5 fund, which is energy and for this fund, there is a whole series of sustainable funds that are used for projects on sustainability, 60% of which will be for sustainable development. We Horizon Europe project, we are looking at improving mobility. Transport is really integrated different transport means, so railroad, port and airport. We need also to consider long distance transport as well as short distance transport within just cities or villages. We need to account for different transport needs and flows within the different projects, all the while taking consideration sustainable transport. The Connecting Europe facility, which has a bit of 2027, so it is a very large fund. It's not the largest in the EU, but it is one of the largest for sure. And across tunnel as well. It's part of this project, as well as the Longturin project. These are smaller projects, but nonetheless are very valuable. To talk about developing well, which needs certain infrastructures to be improved between Nice and Cuneo. Covered by projects that are funded by EU and the aspects that are seemingly important with regards to, especially important with regard to railway transport. So with these 26 billion euros, we want to focus on the climate, so decarbonized project. So we are funding essentially and mainly railway projects, but as well, more and more, we are funding projects that are linked to development of alternatives such as electricity, hydrogen, developing as well solutions for mobility, and specifically the context of public transport. We want people to take public transport. 120 is just starting. As you can see, we completed the first phase of the project in 2020. This is implementing a new paradigm for transport, whereby we want to implement decarbonized transport. The next fund one of our priorities, and that is integrating. But you can see that the climate earmarking is only 30% compared to 60% for the last project. We are currently negotiating with certain stakeholders about projects, and we hope to integrate these considerations into the 2021 as well. We also want to renew certain infrastructures and equipment for railway lines. I had some statistics about the southeast of France and developing hydrogen-based trains. This is something we would like to work on as well. Finally, I would like to mention pollution problems in cities, not just big cities, but also towns. This is currently being implemented. The budget 2021-2023 is 700. This is both for loans and direct funding. In this context, there is also a focus on the environment. With other projects on infrastructure with other countries leads us on to work funds. These funds need to be by 2026. And we'll see as a result of this use of these funds in a long. We also at the recovery plan and how our funding will be able to help countries get back on their feet. A very important principle of this plan is project sustainability. This is what we call the local areas and railway transport specifically. This is why the European Year of Rail 2021 is such an important initiative. Well, I would like to finish by just quickly reminding everyone team which groups together over 200 experts. The fund will be fully implemented up until 2024 and to consideration climate, infrastructure, and environment. We are still working with member states to finish off organizing projects that by 2/3 of the used by infrastructure and railway plans. All of the aspects that are linked to infrastructure are very much at the heart of our initiatives. And finally, just quickly, plans should be happening by the end of that certain member states to access this fund very quickly by project. I would also like to just bring your website, the link of which is with previous regulations. I hope that I'm not gone over presentation and time quickly. I think that what is important in the future is shouldn't be works on the quality of infrastructure being used to keep the public in the loop of developments as well as safety. All these aspects are extremely. I hope that will enable us to European transport as optimum as possible and will help Europe and European countries help one another and gain access to one another more and more easily. We want to be focusing on not, of course, content will follow. Here with us today. Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Excellent. I'm glad that you're here with us here today. You will be able to give your opinion on the current topics. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present and introduce the projects that we are currently. Could we please start with the so this is the Beau-Truc in the Alps.
Aber am Ostrand der Alpen.
Rotterdam is in the east, so it's not actually the mountains as much as in the central. Important. Economically, the most important city in the area, which be the top two arrow and goes west towards the Alps. Work in freight, the west axis, large quantity heads down to the in the south. We have very good road connections as well, and a large of roads. To borrow an expression from the Gulf, we speak about the whole initiative with 3 tunnels, as you can see now on the PowerPoint. There is the connection by Bosru, third tunnel, which is not linked to more to do with import and export.
Korridor und
are currently being resolved.
bleibt also das dritte Problem am Bossrohr.
The pass over to the next slide.
Und einen knapp
that links. We have 5 kilometers. However, actually efficiency of transport with a new project which will be kilometers long. Could you please change to the next slide? There was change in there will be continues to go from Syria to South Germany. Next slide. This project closely linked to the rest of Alps.
Gelöst wird, sondern ist Teil eines.
It is not just a local problem which would be resolved by building this tunnel. Building such a tunnel will, of course, bring a solution for a wide number of regions. If we just have a quick look at the cross-European map, we will see that in a region of between different regions.
Zwischen Brenner und Semmering ist in dem
This lack is for passengers and freight and has not been resolved as of yet.
Eine teilweise Lösung für zur Schließung dieser Lücke.
A partial solution that will be able to solve this problem is the most corridor, which has fill the hole, fill the gap. Region.
Der
we will respect new standards for modern fixtures. We will be able to respect the new please. This tunnel from Basra will form an essential part of the new corridor down towards the Villars, Ljubljana, Zagreb, and up to Turkey via for this presentation. You will be able to see the last slide in case someone would like some more information. Thank you again. Now the president of the
Sì, assolutamente la sia per quanto riguarda il passaggio, quindi nord di Savona che sta nel mezzo avrebbero una connessione molto più veloce per quanto riguarda le merci, ma anche i passeggeri troverebbero di viaggiare molto più veloce.
And solve the saturation problems. Genova.
Marsiglia, il terzo valico e potrebbe
The north of Europe and the rest of Italy. To the Mediterranean. Move as well the traffic on our highways.
Trasferire dalla gomma al ferro, quindi dall'autostrada alla ferrovia le merci, consentirebbe di guadagnare molto in termini di tempo e di affidabilità e di tempi certi di consegna delle merci stesse, naturalmente a garantire una sicurezza di viaggio dei viaggiatori, delle persone molto molto più alta. Quindi l'importanza di questo corridoio mediterraneo è chiara a tutti. Naturalmente
Là, j'évoquais avec vous les perspectives, justement, parce qu'on ne s'arrêtera pas là et il y a encore beaucoup de travail, évidemment.
Allow work between Ventimiglia and the axis be adapted to every type of terrain. Through the sea as well. There will be a strong railway and a part where 2018, we've been asking place corridor, a complementary an axis concerning about 60,000 people per day. And 93% use personal vehicles to travel on this axis. For the Imperia province of Italy, 7,000 people for studies or works move between France and Italy every day, and 4,000 between Ventimiglia and Monaco. So it is, of course, very clear that there is a great need of transportation for those people, and to reinforce this axis, it is fundamental for our collaboration between Italy and France that will go all the way to Portugal, Spain, or Germany.
Merci beaucoup, Giovanni Berino, président de la région Ligurie, d'avoir partagé aussi
Se posso solo aggiungere gli ultimi 5 secondi, questo sarebbe anche molto importante in relazione a quanto detto prima dalla rappresentante della regione Pacca per quanto riguarda la cosiddetta ferrovia delle meraviglie, quindi la ferrovia del Roia, Cuneo, Tenda, Ventimiglia, perché metterebbe, visto che per i prossimi 5 anni molto probabilmente non ci sarà il tunnel stradale che permette di unire Piemonte, regione Sud e Liguria, permetterebbe di incrociare la linea ferroviaria che da Cuneo scende a Ventimiglia, passando per Tenda e andando anche verso Nizza, permetterebbe di incrociare un asse ferroviario molto importante, mettendo in connessione Francia, Italia, Liguria, Piemonte, regioni del Sud attraverso la ferrovia e non attraverso la strada. E questo sarebbe una buona pratica anche per quando il tunnel stradale ci sarà. Grazie.
Voilà, c'était important de le rajouter parce qu'on parlait de perspective avec vous. Je le disais donc, Giovanni Berino, vice-président de la région Ligurie, qui était connecté à cette salle. Ce matin, on poursuit notre tour de table et on revient en France avec la vice-présidente de la région Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, Martine Giber, qui normalement est connectée avec nous, elle aussi, ce matin. Est-ce qu'elle est là? Est-ce qu'elle nous entend?
Oui. Oui, vous m'entendez?
L'image. Soyez la bienvenue. Bienvenue avec nous ce matin. On va
Welcome.
Oui, bonjour à toutes et tous. J'espère que vous m'entendez bien. Donc,
I hope you hear me well. I would like to talk about a great project for Rhône-Alpes region, a railway that started in 2019, which is called the Lehman Express, which links France and Switzerland. There is a presentation. Could you please share it so that we can see what we're talking about? I can't see it. It's coming. Here it is. Very well. One again. So we go straight to the point. Oh, that's not the one, actually. That's the second one. For the other round table. There must be another one.
Sinon, je vais vous présenter le projet.
Otherwise, I can still introduce you. I can still make the presentation without.
Nos équipes sont en train de récupérer les bons documents afin de vous
faciliter. Our teams are going to find the proper document, but you can start. So it is a cross-border railway service between France and Switzerland regions. to improve greatly mobility, specifically for everyday mobility, cross-border mobilities between Haute-Savoie region, département, and the Ain department, and the Vaud and Genève cantons of Switzerland. This project started in December 2019 with a lot of infrastructure production. 15 kilometers of railways have been constructed between Genève and Annemasse in France. In Haute-Savoie have been realized. This infrastructure benefited from European funds, and this project has a stake of 230 kilometers and connects 45 stations and represents about 240 trains every day with a frequency at the rush hour of 6 trains per hour. So it is a very important connection. It's comparable in France to an RER in Paris, local trains. We have a target of 50,000 passengers per day. Of course, these numbers have decreased through the health crisis because many passengers switched to remote work. So we had to change our aspects, and we are actually targeting 30,000 passengers per day for now, which is already something important. And next slide, please. You can see the map of the project. The new lines are very dense around the Lehman Lake, Geneva Lake, and go beyond in different directions, especially on the French side. New railway lines are continuing this basis network. So it is specifically, or among other things, to everyday cross-border workers, but also for other transports, for touristical purposes, business purposes, etc. Specifically to see the complexity of this project, we have a French-Swiss governance with 4 different local authorities, transport authorities, Rhône-Alpes Region, Vaud and Genève cantons, and also the federal Swiss state, and also the French and Swiss railway authorities. The target is multimodal cross-border connections. We mentioned before intermodality, and those railway connections are connected to roads, to important roads. And our target is also to have a single e-ticket system and share information. The Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region invested a lot in infrastructure for this project, buying new materials, 27 new trains, Regiolis trains, and 23 flirt trains on the Swiss side. That's it for the presentation of this project. It is a project we want to highlight, which is completely part of the environmental stakes with important traffic problems on those axes on this sector, a lot of pollution, air pollution. So we're talking about a project that brings long-term solutions to these problems here. The second project, we're talking about a line that is more humble in terms of traffic. Next slide, please. That I wanted to mention. The PowerPoint is on its way. So you can start the description. It is another cross-border project between France and Switzerland. It is very emblematic. It is called the Montblanc Express between Saint-Gervais, Chamonix, Valorcine in France, all the way to Martigny in Switzerland, in Valais canton. Here you can see it on the map. It is at the core of the Alps, right? It is at the foot of the Mont Blanc mountain, and it is, of course, it has specific constraints that can be common in the Alpine region. This line is electrified, and it has a meter gauge, and it is a rack train because of the mountains, of course. So it needs specific trains, and it is very important for the touristical sector with 30 trains per day in the high season, which is both winter and summer. But there are also everyday commuters in the valley. And we ambition to increase dramatically those numbers because only 2.5% of the inhabitants of the valley use this train. So there are high stakes in that, as well as in air pollution. We would like to increase numbers of commuters and improve the quality of our services, and we work with the local authorities as well as with the Swiss local authorities. What I wanted to mention too, what is specific to the Alpine region railway networks, is that it needs continuous investments, very important investments, and of course we need co-fundings. Those investments are heavy. They are always important. That's why we have to keep an eye on our relationships between different authorities and make these kind of lines long-term and durable. And we would like to improve the connections of this line, for example, with the Lehman Express one, that could allow to travel from Chamonix to the International Geneva Airport, for example, and then London and etc. in a matter of hours or very reduced time. A small line that is to be very important for tourism, but very well connected, and as well as with the European and environment stakes. That's it for those two lines. I am, of course, available for any questions on this topic. Thank you very much, Martine Giber, Vice President of the Rhône-Alpes region. We will meet again at the roundtable in a few minutes. You will come back to us to talk about it. But before we finish, we will connect with Thierry Müller now, which is the Minister of Transport for the Grisons canton of Switzerland. We will talk about linking Alps. So Thierry Müller will tell us more about it if he is connected, if he can hear us.
Voilà, bonjour à tous. Vous m'entendez?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Welcome. Thank you so much. As I was saying, we're going to be talking about these projects with you, linking Alps. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about this project. Over to you, Thierry Müller. Of course. So, Linking Alps is a project that Patrick Skiewski talked about earlier on in his slides. The idea really is to use #1 marketing for public transport so that clients and customers know where the supply of transport is. This can therefore be difficult sometimes for passengers to find the information. Linking Alps wants to really bring a great deal more awareness for railway passengers to know where trains are running within the Alpine region. We have only just started our project, and hopefully by the end of 2022, we will have some concrete results. The next steps with our partners, for example, in Swiss, we have the SVDP, whereby we have a coverage of 98% for mobile telephones, and in other regions, there are local applications that people can download to find out when trains are running. So there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that mobile apps are available to customers. This is the most important thing that we need to be doing. We also want to be using in this project to improve things in Switzerland. We want to be improving cable cars, and we want to be able to calculate the amount of time that people wait during rush hours and the amount of time that it takes for people to come down from valleys to the lowlands. We need to include innovative solutions in this project to achieve our objectives. In the Linking Alps project, we have started working on this and we need to continue working on it. The next step is to be able to give people information about timetables and for customers to be able to buy train tickets directly on applications. Hopefully, we will be able to achieve these objectives in the AG4 action group. Thank you very much, Thierry Muller. Time is flying, but don't disconnect. We have a lot more discussions to come. We're going to be having a roundtable debate in just a few minutes. I suggest that we have a quick break before that, though, just a quick 10-minute break before we move on to the second part of the morning, the roundtable. So, see you in 10 minutes.
Merci, je vais vous inviter à reprendre place.
Thank you very much. Please take your seats once again so that we can continue on with this morning on the fourth conference of the EUSALP conference on smart mobility in the Alpine region. Thank you so much for everyone who has been able to be with us here in Nice today, as well as those who are joining us by Zoom. We will continue this conference on Alpine transport by talking about our next debate. The next speaker to take the microphone is Ingrid Felipe, who is the Vice Governor of the Tyrol region. We'll be able to as well speak with other different representatives from different states and governments. Ms. Felipe, are you here with us?
Merci d'être avec nous encore une fois. Alors, on va évoquer pas mal de thématiques.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much again for being here with us. You'll be able to tell us more about railway transport and freight. What could you tell us about the transition in railway transport, please?
Ich durfte es in meinen Eingangsworten schon kurz andeuten, dass gerade am Brennerkorridor natürlich der Güterverkehr eine ganz große Herausforderung ist und wir an
As I
einer
already mentioned in my introduction, in the Brenner corridor, freight transport is a great challenge. We need to work on the future policies of transport in this area. First of all, we are able to build this new tunnel, which will be a remarkable level of infrastructure in the EU. There will be great levels of cooperation as well with neighboring countries, with Italy. Therefore, we need to perform well, we need to be prepared, and we need to ensure that the economy has created the right framework to allow this project. There are very many transport trucks that traverse the Tyrol region. Transport is a very heavy load, and this is why we must absolutely modify the transport systems that are currently in place in order to improve the situations for our co-citizens. We also need to look at decarbonization. We must absolutely have a very highly performing level of transport. We need to transform freight transport as well. Of course, we also need to look at decarbonizing truck transport and strengthening rail transport. At the same time that we should be focusing on infrastructure, we need to make sure that the systems that are currently in place are sufficient. Taxes are always relevant, so that people will move over from road transport to rail transport. And license fees are should never be forgotten. We must strengthen the Eurovignette system. The President of the Commission has proclaimed the Green Deal, and she has also declared the support of the modal shift from road transport to rail transport. Thank you very much. What can you tell us about the Tyrol region? How do you manage to accelerate the change from road transport to rail transport? There is still much work to do, I believe.
Wenn es jetzt die Mobilität von Menschen, von Bürgerinnen und Bürgern, die
When
in
talking
Österreich
about mobility of commuters, citizens and co-citizens in Austria who live in Alpine regions, and those who come to visit us as tourists, I'm thinking specifically about people who come and spend their holidays in our region. Well, what can we do to ensure that these people don't take their cars? There are many different measures which have been undertaken. There needs to be a very attractive offer for those who are undertaking long journeys. What I mean by that is that the Austrian railway companies have put together many different offers for train tickets to other European countries. And of course, in support of this, we need to have good levels of mobility on the ground and better access to rural areas. There is a very attractive possibility for those who are aiming to use public transport. You must, of course, at least have access to shops. When thinking about tourists, they need to have activities to do in the evenings as well. For lower scale regions, digital technology greatly helps us when we work on trying to improving the offer and the possibilities that we have for these local inhabitants. When looking at ticket prices in South Tyrol, we try to propose attractive prices to incentivize people to take public transport instead of driving. Public transport is really a part of the universal service for citizens. It is an area which is very well funded, as a result of which we are able to offer passengers attractive ticket prices. The high-speed trains do not cost extra compared to in other European countries, and therefore this is a very attractive option for passengers aiming to take long journeys as well as short journeys. So you're rather optimistic about the future of the situation, is that correct?
Für uns alle war, mit der gesundheitlichen Situation sehr, sehr vielen von uns.
Last year was very difficult for all of us. The healthcare crisis has shown to us how important international cooperation is and how useful it is. I think that solutions for transport play a very important part in this as well. We have all felt it when we closed the borders for health reasons for a certain period of time. This led to great difficulties and very complicated situations, which would have been ideally avoided. We've not necessarily all managed to manage these situations in the same way. However, I am very optimistic because in the aftermath of this crisis, which we have all been going through, we're not quite there yet, but hopefully we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. We will have realized how much the communal European space is so precious and how much of a valuable resource it is. Being able to cross borders without any problems is just essential. We don't want to go back to the situation whereby borders are difficult to cross. They inhibit our movement and our freedom. We need to, of course, not forget climate objectives. sustainability is a key factor of the debate, and I'm nonetheless very optimistic about the future, regardless of the past year. Thank you very much for this information and this situation in the South Tyrol region. We're going to continue this debate with Martin Giber, who is the President Delegate of Transport in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. She's very involved in energy and transport, and she's going to be telling us about her ideas. Is she
Yes,
here
I
with
can
us?
hear you. I am from Rhône-Alpes region, by the way. I just wanted to make sure you were listening. I can see you do. I wanted to talk about the modal shift and a few projects we have in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region in the framework of what we have discussed before, and also add some information about the railway freight modal shift. I would like to mention that with you. Do we have the PowerPoint presentation? Yes, I would like to mention then the small freight lines. Go on. No. This modal shift for those capillary and freight lines is very important in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. Invested a lot, a big plan to salvage the freight railway line network in our region, and we could rescue 2 lines in the Ain, Puy-de-Dôme and Cantal departments, which is another example with the Savoie. And there are economic stakes that are very important. This Ugitech metal with thousands of employees could have closed if we couldn't make sure they could transport their goods. So it's stainless steel goods that have to be transported through railway, and this development allows this company to operate. So it is a very important example. And we could also mention the other important project, the Lyon-Torino project. And beyond this, there are many companies that depend on that, and jobs and activity and dynamics that are very important, that we must not neglect. And we must not neglect the small lines connected to the big ones. And here is one example of the local authorities' involvement that is very important, that it's part of the improvement of the air quality as well, with the modal shift organized with the companies. And again, with these companies that I mentioned before, they accompany us. And it could prevent them from working properly and from employ people if the operation costs would be too high for them. That was one example of a decarbonated region. And now let me talk about the alternative fuels and the new types of trains that we are experimenting at the national level with 3 other regions, Bourgogne-Franche-Comté, Grand Est, Occitanie, and Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. We are buying hydrogen trains to Alstom Industries. They are bi-modal hydrogen and trains and represent 52 million euros. The first trials will take part in 2023, and the service will start in 2025. It is in the framework to develop a hydrogen sector in the region as well. This hydrogen mobility can be implemented in both railway and also road. networks, and it is part of the Zero Emission Valley European project in Savoie department. That is a very polluted area. That's why we're investing in the green shift of our fleet of trains with the purchase of these hydrogen trains, and also with the purchase of battery trains that could circulate on non-electrified networks, which is without catenary. And many of our networks are not electrified, so those battery trains would allow us to bring a new solution of transport with low green gas emission. As the organizatory authority, we not only have railway networks, but also road networks with the school, transport, etc. And we are investing in alternative fuels with bio GVN. We have 108 clean vehicles and shuttles, 38 shuttles working with biogas. So we are one of the leading regions on this aspect. For us, the alternative fuels are also a framework for innovation. And we're experimenting, for example, a self-powered shuttle in the Drôme department between a train station and an eco site called the Bio Valley. It is also an important experimentation and the development of intermodality, because modal shift, again, for commuters or for goods, is a part of a good coordination, well-mastered coordination, and logistical platforms and different transport modes. Of course, more railway, but also other types of transport that can adapt depending on the area and population density and other parameters such as relief and climate. That is what I wanted to show you as actions from our part, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. Thank you very much, Martin Giber, Vice President, Delegate to the transport of the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, for all those details. We talked about hydrogen with you now, and we will do it again with our next speaker, Michel Nognaud, Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region president. He will also talk about this intermodal shift. I can hear you very well. Hello, everyone. Especially Martin. We work together in the region mobility commission of the French regions. All regions in France are preoccupied in terms of in different aspects, and one of our aims is to decarbonate as fast as we can the transport sector. And one of the decisions that we have taken as a committee is to concentrate our investment on the rehabilitation of the railways in France, because we are very late. And the travel times are increasing and the popularity of the railway is decreasing, specifically on the small areas, small railways, and the committee recommended to stop electrifying all railways and turn to free jet lines. That was before. Now we have the will in our regions and whatever the type of mobility to decarbonate the modes by using hydrogen, which is an energy vector, not an energy in itself. And we know, of course, that the motors themselves will be electrical and will use the different types of fuels. It is not the best, the ideal solution, but it goes in the right way in terms of experimentation. There is also the descent, which is another type of fuel that allows to decrease the carbon emissions by 80% and also the fine particles. So it is being generalized in each region, and each region, of course, needs to adapt to its own network and its own ecosystem. What we must keep in mind in terms of development, our region is well known as a hydrogen region. 3-4 years ago, we could see that we had a lot of research in Franche-Comté region near Belfort city with its university. We have actors there working on that. We also have international actors with the research sectors, European research developing in our region. We have many actors such as them. And we can see the development of alternative electricity means that allow us to see a development of those new alternative fuels in the future. In terms of regional ecosystem, we tried also to create a local ecosystem. When you talk about hydrogen, then there is a new question, which is the one of the mass scale that allows to decrease costs. When you talk about 15 euros, if the production is small, and with that diesel, it could be 5 euros. So we have to increase scale to decrease costs. And Martin mentioned the 3 hydrogen trains that we have ordered in the different regions of France, Occitanie, etc. Locally, we have worked to create an ecosystem with different clients and economical stakeholders, with manufacturers, train and tractors, and transport and container manufacturers, trucks manufacturers. We must work in cooperation with them, as well as with reparators of trucks that could be part of this, that could be trained, that could be part of the training programs in that framework. We have also a supermarket chain that would help us with their fleet and decarbonate. They're ready to decarbonate through hydrogen investment. And of course, the hydrogen train that will increase scale, which we go towards Dijon or Paris through the traditional lines that are electrified. So we're working on those different scales. They're part of a regional ecosystem, but which has smaller scale ecosystems with local hydrogen production sites that could find consumers and users that would use them. But there are constraints to this development. As Martin mentioned, the cost is more important. It's about 4 million euros for a Regulus train compared to 9.5 million, or of course there are subsidies from the involved regions, and the investment was funded through the 65 million euros from the French state. But on the trucks part, which is also a means of transportation, complementary, the overcost is very high, and the big scale is not possible here. The European rules limit to 40% to the overcosts of the switch from diesel to hydrogen. So there is no economical balance in that aspect. So if we want to improve hydrogen, we have to find quickly new opportunities with public authorities' involvement, massive authorities involvement to improve the development of hydrogen at the same time with the production of hydrogen. Both need to happen at the same time, otherwise it would be too difficult to implement. Then I think about the GNL and GNV. Each region does it on their side with the same methodology. And every region tries to find an economical balance because of course, they use public funds and they need to do a shift that is necessary, that needs to be massive. On our Région Bourgogne-Franche-Comté, this is what I wanted to share with you, and I am looking forward to hearing other speakers. Thank you, and allow me to ask you one question, please. As we were talking about hydrogen, in spite of those restraints, financial restraints, for example, is it all this in a global scale? Do you believe in the future of those, and what perspectives do you see? Are you optimistic? Everyone says diesel fuel is over, but the only one that can replace it for now, it's the electrical motor. The problem with electricity is that between production and use, is complex. The storage specifically is complex because of batteries or an energy vector such as hydrogen. And they use kilos of gas that are embarked on the vehicle itself and allows it to produce energy. So those two storage solutions are the ones that will be developed. There is no alternative as of today to those two solutions. There is no other way than to develop those two modes. So research on batteries to make them more reliable in terms of kilo or storage capacities is one way. For trains or trucks, and the other solution is to produce the energy. And as to electrifying of the railway lines in France, freight aspect is very important. Usually the freight trains in France are diesel because sometimes they have networks that are not electrified. And I think what will be developed in the future. I know that local developers are working on that, which would be easier for users, commuters as well. They could use the facilities they used to use a carbon, that could have a train in the back, an electrical train in the back of the train that could produce from hydrogen, for example, the electricity necessary to have a balance between the weight of the train and the freight, and that we could apply to the passengers trains as well as to the freight trains. So electrifying a railway costs the same amount of money than rehabilitate a whole railway line. I'm talking about France. Here, when the network is in such condition, the hydrogen is the less costly solution and quickest to develop the freight and the passengers trains on the network. So I'm very optimistic. Martin can confirm that the working group that we led at the French region was very productive, but we spent as much time to take decisions as to elaborate to develop the project. That's very French to me. I can see Martin is smiling. Thank you, Michel Meunier, Vice President of Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region. It's good to be optimistic. It's good for us too, and we continue our discussions and our travels with our different speakers. We will try to connect with Italy, again with Elsa De Berti for Venezia region. Can you hear us? It looks like there is a connection issue, but we will try with another Italian, Alfred Venerdì, who I hope will be with us now. We will try to connect with him. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hallo an alle. Buongiorno a tutti.
Bonjour à tous.
We are very pleased. Welcome. Thank you so much
have you here.
for being here with us today. We're going to be talking about many different subjects together.
You are a link
between Italy and
Italy
Northern
and France.
Europe.
Ja, darf ich starten? Posso partire?
Allez-y, oui, bien
May
sûr,
I
oui.
start? Okay, thank you so much. Once again, thank you very much, President, for organizing this event, and thank you so much for inviting me. You have already mentioned that, of course, in the northern regions of Italy, we talk a lot about transport to the Mediterranean and to Northern Europe. We, in the South Tyrol region, follow closely everything that happens. We have one of the largest route infrastructures in the country, both for road and for rail networks. Over the last decades, Italy and Austria have hugely invested, thanks to European funding, in the Italian railway company to build a basic railway system, both for local trains and for high-speed trains, as well as for transporting freight We have, as I mentioned, invested greatly in infrastructure for huge motorways. We need to take into consideration the cross-border regions as well, as that can pose a problem in terms of cooperation. Other organizations are very important for us to overcome the obstacles between different states and different regions. That's why we are so happy to be able to contribute to this work. We need to look at the very meticulous details of heavy freight transport as well. This has been mentioned alongside electrifying railways networks as well. These the policies have been able to show us the way, but we need to come up with concrete projects to support these policies. If I have understood correctly what the president has said, the situation is the same in France as it is with us. There is also a concrete implementation, which sometimes takes a long time, but this is very important to have a mutual network, especially for cross-border regions. We mustn't see this as a sort of a competitive market. We shouldn't be focusing only on ourselves and our own interests. We need to be cooperating, we need to be working together if we want to create such a transition and an alternative solution that respects the environment. We must cooperate between different managers for train companies. We need to overcome obstacles. We need to create communication systems. We must be discussing with one another. But of course, it can be difficult for us, for these projects, to have the right data. In France, Italy, or Germany, how should we be addressing such or such an issue? What would be the best time to transfer road transport to rail transport? How can we improve the flow of transport as well? And that's why we are very happy to have the different platforms. Finally, I would like to just say that when we speak about our activities on a political level, we must focus on the small concrete projects as well. I'm talking, of course, about the contribution of the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. Once again, I am delighted with the future cooperation that shall be undertaken between us, and I'm really looking forward to seeing these very interesting projects come to fruition. This will enable us to speak in greater depth about the relevant issues to do with storage, to do with hydrogen. In Italy, we have created a network, but there is, of course, still work to be done and still questions that need to be answers to do with pressure. For example, 300 bars, 400 bars. We don't necessarily know which industries are going to be heading more towards rail travel or road travel, or using hydrogen energy, for example. There are sometimes just too many open questions in this context, as a result of which it is difficult for us to realize this vision together. This is why we need to have in-depth discussions between regions, notably those that are present with us here today. We don't need to be reinventing the wheel every day. We need to be sharing our experience with one another so that we are heading in the right direction. For hydrogen, for transport, for heavy freight, we have put forward our planning for freight and our timetable, and for passenger transport as well. We have done car sharing initiatives. But as we have just mentioned, individual transport for the moment is heading more towards electric cars. However, we are focusing much more on public transport and heavy road transport too. Along with the Minister of Transport, we are looking at installing green corridors. We want to make railway transport greener and more environmentally friendly. We want also to translate these initiatives onto road transport as well, because everything is linked. As such, we need to create synergy between production and usage. Up until now, there has been a lot of production, but few people who have actually been using it. There have been some trucks that use hydrogen, but not that many. We have introduced 12 new types of trucks, and we hope to incentivize purchasers to switch over to hydrogen consumption. We want to prepare them as well, make sure that the expectations are realistic. And we have seen that there is a great deal of motivation. We just need to make sure that the right information gets to the right people at the right time. We need to be working together, of course. We need to make sure that we're all heading in the right direction. For the European Commission, we need to ensure that we transfer our data up the chain, so that the politicians have the right information to make the right decisions. This is why we need to be monitoring the very small details and working closely with our engineers. Of course, there are still open questions about standardization, and that is where we need to, on a European level, come up with some more concrete answers to the questions so that we can implement the ideas that we are talking about today more concretely on the ground in Nice or in other areas. I'm so glad that people are here today in the south of France and online. I'm sure there'll be many questions that could be asked and transferred up the pipeline to the European Commission. We must absolutely have this kind of feedback so that we can come up with some decent answers to the issues. With all of you, we've been able to contribute to this positive initiative, and that's why I'm delighted to be here today to report this. I'm so pleased to have been invited to talk about the current issues. We want to create a plan that is much more respectful of the environment. I'd just like to ask you a few more things. You talked about traffic and the transfer from road transport to rail transport. I imagine this is something which is difficult to implement. Could you tell us more about that, please? Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Up until now, this subject has always been seen as a kind of competition between the road and rail transport. However, we want to see mobility as something that unites us, that federates us between regions and across borders. We want to get rid of geographical barriers, and we want to break down barriers between the different modalities of transport. And of course, this is not something which happens overnight. It is a long process. However, little by little, we need to be acting on this subject with regard to transferring stations and road to rail And more than anything, the most important thing is training and awareness. We need to be making sure that people are up to date with the latest goings on in the sector of rail transport. We want to get cars off the road and get passengers into trains and onto public transport generally. I would therefore like to ask the question to my colleagues, for example, from Veneto or in the north of Italy. We don't all have the same responsibilities. We don't always have access to the same data at the same time. It is very important to share data and information and make sure that these elements get to the right people so that they can make the right decisions for the world of tomorrow. They need to be making informed decisions because they affect us all. Motorways, railways, what is the easiest to use, what is the cheapest, etc., etc. This is where we need to be investing so that human beings and those who need mobility know what alternatives there are. Just a quick example, when we leave our homes, we shouldn't necessarily be thinking straight away, where is my car? Where are my car keys? We need to be asking ourselves other questions. Are there other possibilities? Are there other means of transport? We need to be looking at digital technology and using it to help improve the situation. Thank you so much for this answer. By 2030, we hope to be improving the situation on Alpine transport. Thank you very much from Bolzano. Now, I very much hope that we'll be able to talk to Mrs. Elisa de Berti to bring a close to this round table. Has Mrs. de Berti been able to join us? I don't think so. Okay, as such, I would like to thank you one and all for being here today with us at the Mediterranean University Center. Thank you very much to all of the teams from the different regions for organizing this conference. Thank you as well to the technical staff who have done their best to sort out all of the technical issues. Thank you for all of the contribution that we have had as well. I know that there are many issues that we need to pursue. Thank you once again for being here with us today. Thank you for participating in this conference, and we very much hope to see you soon.